This is the 5 minute, 5 hour, 5 day cutting board challenge. Cutting boards are one of my favorite things to build, and as many people call them, they are the gateway drug to woodworking. So, whether you're a beginner or a seasoned veteran, this is a great build to watch. What we're going to do is we're going to take 5 minutes, build our first cutting board. Then we're going to take 5 hours, build our second cutting board. And the third thing we're going to do is build, as you guessed it, a cutting board taking 5 days. This is going to be interesting because we're going to get more and more complex each time we go around. So, without further ado, let's dive in.
So the one thing I forgot to mention is that I'm the only guy who videotapes this. I don't have a crew or anything, so I'm literally gonna be carrying you around for 5 minutes. It's gonna be shaky, but we'll see what we can do. Can you get around? All right, so set up. So there we have it, the 5 minute cutting board. Not the greatest, but for 5 minutes, I think it was pretty good. Now for this next one, we're doing a 5 hour project, and we're gonna be using some purple heart, some curly maple, and then also some black walnuts. So what my plan is here is to have the curly maple and the purple heart as the centerpieces of this board. And then from there, I'm gonna have the black walnut on the outside. I think this is gonna give a real clean, sharp, professional look that will be able to go in really any kitchen you have at your house. Now I'm ripping the purple heart and the curly maple to give it a nice clean look in the center. So I'm making 4 strips, 2 of the purple heart and 2 of the curly maple, and then I'm gonna have my 2 black walnut pieces on the outside. And what I'm doing here is just getting a rough estimate on where I need to set my clamps at. And then once I do that, I'm going to be adding the Tybond 2 glue. This is what I like to use for cutting boards. Technically, they say it's not waterproof, but you're never really submerging your board, at least you shouldn't be within water. If you're doing that, you're probably doing something wrong with your cutting board. So I believe this is the best option for it. There are technically options where you could use Tybond 3, which is fully waterproof, but given the limited exposure this is going to be having to water, I think the Tybond 2 is what I'd recommend. Now, the best part about this is the more you clean up now, the more it saves you later. Kind of like what your parents told you when you were a kid. And this is one of the benefits. If you clean up as you go, you don't really have to worry about all of the excess glue that's going to be dried on your project. Now, if I had all the time in the world, I would let this fully cure for at least 24 hours before stressing the joint. But because we have to get this done within 5 hours, I am actually using my hand planer to clean it up as we speak. So once I use my hand planer, I'm just taking off mainly where the center is at because all these pieces are relatively the same thickness, but they were a little bit different in the center, so that's all I had to take. Once I do that, I'm coming back with my sander, just giving a rough sanding, and then I'll come back with a full-on sanding at the very end. But what I want to do here is make it a little bit more complex than just a regular old rectangular cutting board. So I'm sketching out a rough draft of what I would want the rounded edge to be, and then I'm coming back with my saw and just cutting over the edges. So you can make a perfect edge, and if I had to do this in retrospect, I would use a stencil, and you can actually see after the fact I come in and use an old board which I had to make my edges, and this makes it consistent on all four corners. So that one edge is slightly off, but when I was able to actually sand it, it made it a lot more consistent. Now I'm using my bench sander here. I like this because you can just rest your piece right on the plane, as you can see right there, and just make sure you want to go in the downward angle. That's what I recommend, because if you go on the right side of that spinning wheel, it's going to lift your project up and it's going to be really hard to hold, and there's a potential it could spin in your face and actually hit you right in the nose, so just be careful with that. Now, as I said before, once we have the corners already done, we want to give a light sanding just to clean up all the mess that we had before. And then we're just doing a 1/4 inch roundover bit. I like this for all of my cutting boards. It gives it a nice clean look and also protects it from any potentials of cracking or chipping. It's not foolproof, but if you have a sharp edge of a piece of wood and you drop it or you hit a knife against it or just even bump up against it, you could potentially crack it. So the rounded edge does help with that, and then once we put on the wax here, you can see how much better this looks. And there we have it, the 5-hour cutting board. So for the next part of this video, I'm doing the 5-day challenge. So I'm super excited about this. I'll have a few days to go out and do some detailed work. I'll be able to let stuff fully dry. I'll be able to go in and actually make my piece how I want to make it. So for this project, I'm doing a 3D cutting board, and if any of you follow my channel, you know that I enjoy a good 3D cutting board, and I like the challenge of it because if every piece isn't accurately measured and cut, you're going to run into some issues. You're not going to have the 3D effect, and that's generally not the look you want. So for this project, I wanted to use some unique woods for this unique project. So the first up is curly maple, and it isn't actually a super exotic wood, but it does have a special grain pattern that's actually found in the maple. And it's usually light in color, which has the cream or pale gold, as you can see there, and also some wavy stripes depending on how the light hits them and also how you cut the wood and also the type of wood and how it's grown. But the next two items I think are the most interesting. So the first one I have is red grandis. And red grandis is actually a plantation grown eucalyptus wood, so it's actually from Australia, which is imported. And the interesting thing about this is that some people are using this as an alternative to cedar, given the cost of it. It's a little bit more cost effective. But I like it because I think it makes a great choice for furniture and cabinets. I think it looks sharp. When you stain it, it really does pop. So I'm really excited about this. And the last one is, I don't even know how to pronounce this, but it's Ovangkol, Ovangkol. And I found about this from my wood supplier when I was looking for walnut. But actually, it's a lot more cost-effective of an option than walnut. So if you're looking to make a nice big piece, but you don't want to pay the price of a black walnut that you would pay in Western Pennsylvania, you could actually go in and get this Ovangkol, that's what we're going to call it. And it's a relatively hard, medium to hard wood, so it will hold up when you use it for furniture, but also it's going to look great and also won't break the bank. So if you want a full video on how to make the 3D cutting board, I actually have that on my page. I'll put the link into the description of this video as well. But I dive in real deep on the actual cuts and what you need to do to make it. But as you can see here, we already made the cuts and now we're just putting the pieces together. So this is actually an end grain cutting board, and it's the only one I actually have of the three. So the other two are straight grain, and if you don't know, the benefit of an end grain cutting board is that you actually have, as they call it, the end grain. And the reason why this is beneficial is that when you go to use this, and if you're in the kitchen, your knife actually slips through the fibers of the wood and it doesn't actually beat up the wood as much. So when we have those prior to cutting boards, when we use that, you're gonna see there's gonna be cuts in the wood and it's gonna damage over time. The benefit of this is that the blade slips through the fibers, you don't beat up your blade as much and you don't beat up your wood as much, and overall it's just a much better product. If you were to look online, you can see the cost difference of end grain cutting boards. I've seen them marked up 50%, almost to 75 or even 100% more than a regular, as they call like a straight grain cutting board. And if that's worth it, Potentially, they do look better in my opinion. Is it that much of a benefit? Some people will say not, but I firmly believe in end grade cutting boards. I think they're the gold standard of the culinary industry and also for woodworking too. You can make a lot better and I think more artistically visual products when you use an end grain cutting board. So if you're looking for some cool videos out there, there's plenty on YouTube where people really make some incredible designs. And one of the best ways to use that is actually Excel. Yes, Excel, like the software that's used for accounting and finance. And the reason why I say that is each cell can represent a piece of wood that you're placing in there. And if you go online, there's a gentleman by the name of Mike, and he does an incredible video and a visualization on how you can use Excel to make end grain cutting boards. So what I'm doing here is just cutting off the excess of the wood. Now the issue with 3D cutting boards is that you have a lot of waste when it comes to your product. So I don't know if you saw earlier in the video when I'm cutting off the 30-degree angles, there's a lot of waste that I can't really use for any other projects besides little scrap pieces here and there. I'm also making it bigger here and then you have to cut off the excess and you really do waste a lot. But if you cut off the edges, you can actually flip them and put them on the other side of your cutting board so you don't waste all of that wood. Now this last part here is just touching up the little pieces. So obviously we want this to look as great as possible and we did a great job measuring it, we did a great job cutting it, we checked it twice, we made sure it was planed, we were all set. But naturally wood's not going to cut perfectly every time. So if there's any little gaps you have in your 3D cutting board, what you can do is actually go in and mix up some glue and some sawdust so it benefits to not clean up your shop right away. And then what you can do is go in and put that in the gaps and it really seals it up and also will blend it so it looks a lot cleaner and a lot more congruent. Now for this last part here, because this is a luxury cutting board, it's taken 5 days to build this project, I have to put something nice on there. So I'm putting on these brass little heels, we call them, or I guess brass little steps for lack of a better term. And I really like these. You can get them on Amazon for about 20 bucks to 15 bucks, and they really dress up your project. They make it look a lot more professional. It also helps with leveling too, because if cutting boards slightly warp over time, they get wet or they're not perfectly level, you can use these to actually level up the board and make it a lot easier if you're working in a kitchen or working in a culinary environment. And it's funny here because you can actually see that I'm using my other board as a base. And I guess it just goes to show you anything can be a tool when you're in a woodworking shop. Now here is my favorite part. We're putting on the wax and you're really gonna see all three types of wood really pop when this wax goes on. And this not only protects the wood, but it makes it look so much better. So you can see how gray and kind of ugly and dull the product is before. Now we put this wax on and it really brightens up all the wood. You see the rich undertones come out in all three types of wood. You can see the 3D effect as you see the cubes pop out in each individual section, and it makes it look so much better. So I love this part. It's one of my favorite things to do about the product. I end up leaving it on there for about 24 hours and then come back and wipe it off. And then it looks even incredible for weeks, even months after. Now, with that being said, I just want to let you guys know that I appreciate watching till the end and thank you for all your support. Thank you to John Malecki for inspiring this video, and let me know what you guys think about this challenge. As always, be safe, be careful, and have a great day.